President Biden just concluding his press conference. This is the 75th anniversary of NATO, President Biden's first press conference since the debate. I thought he did an incredible job, showed a great deal of command on the issues when it came to foreign policy. I mean, we're talking about real intricate discussion on foreign relations, to the various questions that were being asked. And as he was being pressed, there was also some moments too where we saw some incredible passion being shown by President Biden when he talked about gun violence in the United States of America and the fact that Donald Trump brags about doing nothing and helping the NRA and helping the proliferation of military-style weapons used in school shootings, when President Biden talked about women's reproductive freedoms being taken away, when President Biden talked about Donald Trump wanting to be a dictator, when President Biden was questioned about his mental acuity and his cognitive abilities, President Biden was like, look at my schedule and look at Donald Trump's schedule. Look at the things that I do every day. And what does Donald Trump do? He sits in his golf cart all day and he checks his scores and he just kind of sits there like that. Is that what you're referring to? When President Biden was challenged about gaffes that he made, he goes, just look at what Donald Trump says. Listen to what he says. And President Biden answered question after question, multi-part questions. Why don't we just show a little recap of what went down, and then why don't we all talk about it? Let me just call in Brett and Jordy so you can see their faces and know that they're here as well. Let's do a quick recap of some of the key moments, I thought, of this press conference. And then let's just talk about this current moment, and let's talk about where we go from here. First off, we had President Biden when he was asked about, well, what do you think about your legacy? You. He's like, this isn't about me. I'm here to complete a job. Watch this.
I'm not in this for my legacy. I'm in this to complete the job I started. As you recall, understandably, many of you and many economists thought my initial initiatives that I put forward, can't do that, it's going to cause inflation, things are going to skyrocket, the debt's going to go up. What are you hearing now from mainstream economists? 16 economic Nobel laureates said I've done a hell of a job. That under my plan so far and what's going to happen in the future if I'm reelected, that things are going to get much better. Our economy is growing. I was determined when I got elected to stop the trickle-down economic theory, that if the wealthy did very well, everybody else would do well. My dad was a well-read, decent guy. I don't remember much trickling down on his kitchen table. Middle-class people and working-class people need help. And so what happened is I decided to was able to implement as president what I believed when I was a senator. And that is that the way to build this economy is from the middle out and the bottom up. That way we grow the economy. And the wealthy still do very well. They do fine. And guess what? Find me an mainstream economist who said we haven't done well. What have we not done that isn't working right now? And so we got more to do, though. We got to finish the job.
President Biden was then asked about the concerns from our allies that Donald Trump may weaken NATO, as Donald Trump said that he would consider pulling America out of NATO and disbanding NATO. Here, let's play this clip.
Thank you, Mr. President. How are you?
I'm well.
The elections in the US have consequences around the world. You have pretty high standing in Europe. I just asked President Macron about you, and he said we are happy to have him as the President of the United States. But there is a concern. Many people in Poland and across Europe are worried that the former president may win the election. And there's a lot of concern that Donald Trump may weaken NATO, stop supporting Ukraine, or push Ukraine to give up territories to Russia.
They're correct.
And
Yeah, he answered it directly. That's what Donald Trump wants to do. President Biden was then asked about his schedule and if he feels he's able to keep his schedule. Here, play this clip.
I think
Presidency is the most straining job in the world, and it's 24/7. How can you say you'll be up for that next year, in 2 years, in 4 years, given the limits you've acknowledged that you have today?
the limits I've acknowledged I have.
There's been reporting that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true. Look, what I said was, instead of my every day starting at 7 and going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more. And I said, for example, the 8, 7, 6 stuff, instead of starting a fundraiser at 9 o'clock, start at 8 o'clock. People get to go home by 10 o'clock. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, and if you looked at my schedule since I made that stupid mistake in the campaign, in the debate, I mean, my schedule has been full bore. I've done, where's Trump been? Riding around in his golf cart, filling out his scorecard before he hits the ball? I mean, look, he's done virtually nothing.
Then President Biden talks about the standing of the United States leading NATO. Let's play this clip.
Ask you about your, you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. And you now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, the German Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. Officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think? And the Putin piece, I was talking about Putin, and I said, and now, at the very end, I said, here, I mean, Putin. I said, no, I'm sorry, Zelensky. And then I added 5 other names. Look, guys, the idea anybody suggests that we haven't had an incredibly successful conference. How many times did you hear in that conference, I know it sounds too self-serving, but other leaders, heads of state, in thanking me, saying the reason we're together is because of Biden, because Biden did the following. Look, folks, this is, well, anyway, I thought it was the most successful conference I've attended in a long time, and find me a world leader who didn't think it was.
President Biden then talks about what Donald Trump's been saying at his rallies, where Donald Trump said that he only recently learned upon becoming president what NATO was, and he never knew what NATO was before then. Here, play this clip.
I think, how can I say this without sounding too self-serving? I'm not having any of my European allies come up to me and say, Joe, don't run. What I hear them say is, you've got to win. You can't let this guy come forward. It'd be a disaster. It'd be a disaster. I mean, I think he said in one of his rallies, don't hold me to this, recently, where NATO, I just learned about NATO or something to that effect. Foreign policy has never been his strong point. And he seems to have an affinity to people who are authoritarian.
President Biden then gets fired up talking about gun violence and raises his voice for the first time during the presser. This was an important moment right here. Let's watch it.
There's that little button we have. Control guns, not girls. I mean, the idea, we're sitting around, this is where Kamala's so good as well. We're sitting around, more children are killed by a bullet than any other cause of death. The United States of America. What the hell are we doing? What are we doing? We got a candidate saying, promise the NRA, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. You got a Supreme Court that is what you might call the most conservative court in American history. This is ridiculous. There's so much we can do still. And I'm determined to get it done. It's about freedom. And
then President Biden talks about our democracy being under siege. Let's play this clip.
Do you think our democracy is under siege based on this court? Do you think democracy is under siege based on Project 2025? Do you think he means what he says when he says he's going to do away with the civil service, eliminate the Department of Education, make sure, we've never been here before. And that's the other reason why you say, hand off to another generation. I've got to finish this job. I've got to finish this job because there's so much at stake.
Then finally, he was asked about a portion of his press conference where he misspoke and referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump for a second. And then the questioner said, well, Trump's using that to mock you right now. How do you respond to that? Here's what President Biden said.
This concludes.
Respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press.
Listen to him. And so this is what Donald Trump posted moments ago. Let's pull up the post from Donald Trump's social media. Crooked Joe begins his, quote, big boy press conference with, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, though I think she was not qualified to be president. Great job, Joe. President Biden responds, by the way, yes, I know the difference. One's a prosecutor and the other is a felon. It's a great response right there. I want to speak more about that press conference, but I do want to show this is a video that we created at MeidasTouch as well. This goes to what President Biden was saying at the end. Listen to his words. So this was a speech that President Biden gave on July 9th about NATO. Donald Trump gave a speech at his property at Doral, Miami. And take a look at the difference between these two speeches and tell me which one do you think, which person here do you think the media is telling that they need to step down? Let's watch this.
In 1949, leaders of 12 countries, including President Truman, came together in this very room and created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
I didn't even know what the hell NATO was too much before, but it didn't take me long to figure it out, like about 2 minutes.
Today, NATO is stronger than it's ever been in its history. 32 nations strong.
28 countries. 28 countries. Think of that.
We know Putin won't stop at Ukraine. But make no mistake, Ukraine can and will stop Putin.
You know, Ukraine, when you think Ukraine, I had a very good relationship with Putin. We talked about it. It was the apple of his eye.
As President Reagan put it, and I quote, if you are threatened, we are threatened. If you're not at peace, we cannot be at peace.
And they said, would you protect us? I said, no, I will not protect you from Russia.
Again and again at critical moments, we chose unity over disunion.
When people who love our country protest on January 6th in Washington, they become hostages.
Freedom over tyranny, hope over fear.
If you leave Florida, you end up getting shot, mugged, raped.
This is a pivotal moment for Europe, for the transatlantic community, and I might add for the world.
Did anyone ever see the lovely movie Silence of the Lambs? Did you see it? Did you ever hear of Hannibal Lecter? He was a lovely man.
Reagan knew it then, and we know it now. Our nations will continue to keep faith with what we pledged in years to come.
Yes, oh yes, and quickly, says President Trump. Yes, oh yes.
Well, there you have it. And by the way, have we seen Donald Trump in recent memory hold a press conference like the one President Biden did and get asked actual serious questions about nuanced foreign policy and discuss foreign policy like that? No, we haven't.
And by the way, you know, Biden, of course, he gaffed at the top. I'm sure a lot of the corporate media is going to focus on the VP Trump, VP Harris moment because that's the easy thing to talk about. But he then proceeded to have what I thought was actually one of the most impactful moments of his entire presidency. And, you know, honestly, the clips that we even played on the show don't even quite do it justice. I recommend that you go. We streamed the entire press conference, watch it on the MeidasTouch YouTube channel or watch it anywhere, quite frankly, because the answers he gave, especially about foreign policy to me, were intricate, were detailed, showed a deep command of the issues that Donald Trump could not even ever do a hundredth of that. Joe Biden has more foreign policy knowledge and experience in his pinky than Donald Trump has in his entire body. I thought he made an absolutely outstanding contrast to Trump, especially on the foreign policy issues, especially when he got passionate about gun violence, especially when he made the case as being the most pro-union president. And I was watching this going, why he should be doing this all the time. Like, not to be like, do something. But I honestly, if I were Joe Biden, I would be doing 2 of these a week at this point. I'd be holding fireside chats, because what we saw there was truly like watching an elder statesman tell us what's going on, tell us the stakes of the battles we are facing across the world, tell us the stakes of the fight for our democracy here at home, tell us the stakes of the fight for our freedoms here at home, the fight for reproductive rights, the fight against gun violence. I mean, that was Joe Biden at his best. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. I'm seeing a lot of praise for him online after that speech, with a lot of people going, "Oh, I didn't know he knew that much about foreign policy." Yes, that's his thing. That's his thing. And we can't let these media narratives continue to get in the way of who these people are. And you know what the media is going to do? They're going to amplify every little gaffe while they ignore every Donald Trump gaffe and treat it like it's a joke.
1949, leaders of 12 countries, including President Truman, came together in this very room and created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
I didn't even know what the hell NATO was too much before, but it didn't take me long to figure it out, like about 2 minutes.
Today, NATO is stronger than it's ever been in its history. 32 nations strong.
28 countries. 28 countries. Think of that.
We know Putin won't stop at Ukraine, but make no mistake, Ukraine can and will stop Putin.
You know, Ukraine, when you think Ukraine, I had a very good relationship with Putin. We talked about it. It was the apple of his eye.
As President Reagan put it, and I quote, "If you are threatened, we are threatened. If you're not at peace, we cannot be at peace."
And they said, "Would you protect us?" I said, "No, I will not protect you from Russia."
Again and again at critical moments, we chose unity over disunion.
When people who love our country protest on January 6th in Washington, they become hostages.
Freedom over tyranny, hope over fear.
If you leave Florida, you end up getting shot, mugged, raped.
This is a pivotal moment for Europe, for the transatlantic community, and I might add for the world.
Did anyone ever see the lovely movie Silence of the Lambs? Did you see it? Did you ever hear of Hannibal Lecter? He was a lovely man.
Reagan knew it then. We know it now. Our nations will continue to keep faith with what we pledged in years to come.
Yes, oh yes, and quickly, says President Trump. Yes, oh yes.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.